Podcasting from Dallas, Texas. I am Shireen, and this is the Yumlish podcast. Yumlish empowers people with chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes and heart disease to take charge of their health through diet. And this podcast is created to amplify the voices of patients, health professionals, employers, and community members who are working to reduce the risk of these chronic diseases and put your health first. On today's episode, registered dietitian Taylor Barros speaks to the benefits of implementing exercise into your lifestyle for someone with diabetes, fueling your body the right way pre and post workout, even if you are short on time. Taylor Barros is the director of sports nutrition at Georgetown University. She's currently pursuing her MBA while being the sports dietitian for all 29 teams at Georgetown. Welcome, Taylor.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolute pleasure having you on. So, Taylor, walk me through what got you into nutrition and then more specifically sports nutrition.
So what got me into nutrition was back in high school. I actually had a really close friend of mine who suffered from an eating disorder. So, I saw her kind of lose herself in this process and through this disease and really disconnect from her friends and her family and suffer, a tremendous amount. And she went away to a treatment center. And when she came back and she was this person that we all loved and missed, I just thought seeing how nutrition played a role in that was so cool to me. Like seeing how she totally regained herself again just by eating. I thought it was amazing. And then sports nutrition specifically. So I went to Florida State for my undergraduate degree in dietetic science, and I was the secretary for the Student Dietetic Association. So we were having a meeting where we had the director of sports nutrition from Florida State come and introduce herself and talk to everyone. And I just remember as soon as she left, I ran after her and was asking to volunteer for her and whatever I could do to help. And so ultimately that led me to working with the football team at Florida State and really getting into sports nutrition.
Interesting. So I want to dive in and ask you a little bit about sports nutrition and then how diabetes and other chronic illnesses, which is a space that we are in, how it ties into the type of nutrition that you practice. So what we do know is that, well, when it comes to diabetes and chronic illnesses, we often hear about nutrition and exercise. Those are the two things we continuously hear about, right? So can you speak to the benefits of implementing exercise into the daily lifestyle and especially for someone, again, being diagnosed with diabetes?
So exercise, as we all know, has numerous health benefits, and then specifically for those with diabetes and other chronic illnesses. I think creating a healthy routine that includes an exercise regimen is huge because we know that it helps lower blood pressure, it fights against heart disease, it improves blood lipid profiles. We see mood and sleep changes and improvements. And especially for our older individuals, our older population dealing with diabetes and other chronic illnesses, it really can improve balance and flexibility, which is huge for some of these individuals. And so, exercise comes in all different forms and activities, but resistance training is really associated with so many health benefits. So we know that someone who does resistance training, they do weightlifting, we see a higher resting energy expenditure, right? So their metabolism, their metabolic expenditure is picking up. We see increased bone mineral density, which again is huge for the elderly population, and improved body composition. So someone who is suffering, from type 2 diabetes or heart disease, and can maybe, lose a little bit of weight, could help improve their overall lifestyle. We see these improved body compositions with exercise and resistance training. And low muscle strength and obesity have actually been shown to be associated with a higher incidence of insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes. And so resistance exercise to increase muscle strength and lean muscle mass has really been found to increase insulin sensitivity in those individuals with type 2 diabetes, as well as other healthy adults. And so, it's really important that those sedentary individuals and adults that have type 2 diabetes try to implement resistance training as well as some high intensity exercise interval training. That's also been shown to improve muscle and liver insulin sensitivity to a greater extent than just prolonged moderate intensity exercise.
Interesting. And so with exercise comes the need to fuel your body. What should patients with diabetes be thinking about when fueling before or after a workout?
So I think the biggest thing when it comes to fueling for a workout, right? My population is different because I'm working with, typically college athletes who are in pretty good shape and overall healthy. I do have athletes that have type 1 diabetes, and I do have some athletes that actually have type 2 diabetes. And so when I'm working with these individuals, the most important thing always, always, always is that we're checking our blood sugar, our blood glucose constantly, right? So before, during, and after exercise, it's imperative that we're checking. And so what those results show is really going to have an impact on what our nutrition will be. So before and after exercise, right, you're going to check your blood glucose, and especially before, if you notice that your blood sugar is too low, right, you might be in a hypo state, little hypoglycemic. We follow what's called the 15-15 rule. And so the 15-15 rule says that if you're below that 70 milligrams per deciliter, then you're going to have 15 grams of carbohydrates, wait 15 minutes, and recheck. And so you'll do that for 15 minutes back to back until you've kind of hit that good to go, your blood sugar is where it should be, and you're ready to train. And so we'll just repeat those steps. And then again, we have a lot of athletes who, we check their glucose during practice. And so if another point we notice that their blood sugar is low or too high, we might pull them off and give them a second. We might be feeding them some simple sugars right there during training. But really the most important thing I would say is just to make sure that you're constantly checking. And, we all know that hydration and diabetes are huge together. And so making sure that you go into a workout properly hydrated, I would say, is another huge factor, a big component for our athletes. And so we like to say that, looking at the color of your urine is the most easiest way to really check if you're hydrated. And so we always like to say your urine should be light like lemonade. If it's ever like apple juice, right, then you're pretty dehydrated at that point. So we're not putting you out there to train. We're holding you off for that practice.
Many people like doing different types of exercises. So be it more cardio focused, like walking, running, biking, or even more weight training for that matter. Does the type of exercise you do impact what sorts of foods you should be eating?
Absolutely. So different types of exercise, right? Whether it's some anaerobic exercise, aerobic exercise, it's really going to have an impact on the type of nutrition that you're going to implement. So I would say that for someone who is doing more of that resistance strength training, we're not necessarily focused on carbohydrates as much. While carbohydrates are our body's main energy source, right, and they're important, we're really going to be focused on a more balanced plate. So someone who's going into a weight training session at the gym, right, their pre-workout should be focused more on a balanced plate. So you have a good amount of carbohydrates with some fat and some protein. So for example, a slice of toast with peanut butter, that's a great pre-workout snack for someone who's going to weight train, right? The fat from the peanut butter will slow down that digestion and absorption of the glucose in that bread and really help to kind of level out and maintain that energy during the training session. Whereas someone who's going to do some more high intensity training or, some long duration, pretty high intensity training, so a cross country athlete or a track athlete or even a basketball player, right? These snacks, they will be more focused on carbohydrates because you want some quick carbohydrate energy that'll get into your system, break down, and you're ready to go. And so that breakfast might change from just toast with peanut butter to maybe white toast with some jelly, right? And again, because those are such simple sugars, we want to make sure that someone with diabetes is really checking and monitoring that blood glucose. And then if you're an individual who is doing lower intensity exercise, so maybe instead of running a marathon, you're walking a marathon, right? At that point, it's really important, while our body's running off carbohydrates, it's actually utilizing more fat for fuel during that time. So if you think of a light dimmer versus a light switch. So a light dimmer, the more intense that brightness of that light, the more intense that exercise, the more your body's running off carbohydrates. As the light intensity decreases, as your training intensity decreases, the more your body runs off fat for fuel. So when someone's out there running a marathon, that's when they can be snacking on nuts as they're walking, or snacking maybe with a granola bar that has some peanut butter in it, versus someone who is doing an Ironman triathlon and they're just doing goos and gels and more of those simple sugar choices. And then I would say, those are all good pre-workout recommendations, but really for recovery, what's huge, again, you're checking that blood sugar and you're really seeing where you fall. And then eating according to that in terms of carbohydrates. But it's really important that you're also not just replenishing those liver and muscle carbohydrate stores, those glycogen stores with carbohydrates, but that you're really getting enough protein in your body. And so I would say, depending on the size of the individual, you can aim for about 20 to 30 grams of protein for recovery. And that can look anything like, eggs, to dairy products, to meats, nuts, any sort of protein. So even if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you can definitely find some good high quality protein for your diet.
And when you said that much portion, so in serving size, what are we talking about?
So about 20 to 30 grams of protein. 20 grams of protein would be about one chicken breast. So typically I'll have someone take the size of like an iPhone. A typical iPhone would be that portion size of protein that you're looking for. One whole egg has about 7 grams of protein. So if you take out the egg whites, obviously going to be less, like 3 or 4 grams of protein. And about 1 cup of Greek yogurt would satisfy that protein recommendation as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's helpful. So with all this talk about food, especially that when you talked about the peanut butter on the toast, it's got me a little bit hungry. So why don't we take a break here real quick, Taylor? And so we'll hear more about Taylor's thoughts on quick ways to fuel your body post-workout after this brief message from our sponsors. All right, welcome back. So Taylor, thanks so much. So far, so good. I'm loving this. I want to dive a little bit further into what you mentioned earlier. So, working with student athletes, you deal with such a wide variety of backgrounds, I'm sure, different body types, different lifestyles. You've discussed the importance of relationship building with your athletes. How do you think your ability to do this, specifically meeting them where they are in terms of their diet and lifestyle, really allows you to help them make positive changes in their diet?
I work under the, if you're there, you care mentality, which is something that one of my mentors had taught me back when I worked at University of Texas. And that's been huge for me, because it's not enough to just be, a name to a face, right? At Georgetown, you mentioned all 29 teams, which is over 700 athletes, and just myself. So it is really important that I am around these athletes as much as I possibly can and build that rapport with them. So making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable to be able to come to me, right? So that means going out to practices and being in the dining hall and checking in on them, just in the hallway and stopping to have a conversation with them. I think it really is huge for these athletes to know that I'm a reliable resource, especially because this is just the start of this program at Georgetown. So we just became a department in February of 2020. And so, being around them as much as possible really is what's going to get them to want to come to my office. And then I think that's the hardest part, is getting them to come in. And once they're there, normally it's about, like you said, meeting them where they are. And so really looking at what stage of change are they in? Are they coming to me in a pre-contemplation stage where, they're really not ready to make any changes? Are they ready for, preparation or an action stage where we can really begin and kind of start this journey together? And it's okay. Sometimes they fall back in stages and sometimes they're ready to go. And And so just being there when they're ready, and really taking the, um, you know, chemistry and biology and all that stuff of nutrition out and putting it into terms that they understand. So when I talked about, the light dimmer, that's an easy way for them to get what I'm talking about instead of getting into, the chemistry of the body and everything.
Interesting. Between practices, competition, and then, of course, academics, the student athletes you work with at Georgetown have really busy schedules, right? So I imagine that this makes it really hard for them to really slow down enough during the day to be able to cook complex meals for themselves. So do you have any recipes or go-to meals or even nutrition hacks that we can learn about?
Yeah, so I think, what's been huge at Georgetown specifically is that we've created this box meal program. So for our athletes who can't run to the dining hall and build a plate and sit down and eat, we have box meals that are ready to go. And so I think that's huge for any individual who is on a tight schedule, right? As these athletes graduate and go on to be, normal humans, they're still going to have the same struggles that they have in college. And so for all of us, I think preparing food, meal prepping ahead of time is huge. And it does not have to be, a different recipe every night and everything's set and it's already prepared and cooked. It can be just as simple as chopping veggies on Sunday so they're ready to go and throw into a stir fry Monday night. It can be as easy as, you know, making a dish like a lasagna and then just sticking it in the freezer and it's ready to be taken out whenever. Or something that I really love is using the crock pot. And so I'll have my athletes just throw everything into a crock pot, at some point in the day and flip it on. And when they're back in the afternoon, they're able to turn it off and ready to go. I think having a plan for the week in terms of your nutrition is also huge. So not just about preparing things in advance, but really thinking about your schedule and knowing what struggles you're going to be having. Okay, if I'm busy Monday through Friday, maybe the only time for me to go to the grocery store is Saturday morning. So really planning that out and writing out that grocery list so you can get in and get out as quickly as possible and be good to go without having to go to the grocery store several times. And then in terms of recipes, I think easy things for my athletes that I always recommend for breakfast would be something like overnight oats. And so that's as simple as throwing some oatmeal, into a mason jar and adding whatever you want to it, honestly. So, some athletes put almond milk and chia seeds and berries in there and a little bit of honey. You put it in the refrigerator, let the oats really soak up and absorb all of the almond milk as with the chia seeds. And the next morning, you've got a great healthy breakfast that's balanced, got some fiber, good nutrients, and you're ready to go. I really push these things called energy bites, these little snack balls, with my athletes because, again, you can make a bunch of them at a time and leave them in your freezer and just take them out whenever. And so that is kind of similar to the overnight oats, where you're mixing together oatmeal, peanut butter, maybe some protein powder, raisins, seeds, kind of really, again, whatever you want the flavor profile to be. And you're rolling them into balls and then putting them in the fridge. And so those can be a little bit more calorically dense because of the peanut butter that holds it together. But, having 2 or 3 in the middle of class when you're hungry for a snack, that's super easy. I think things like wraps and sandwiches to go are always great for anyone, really. If you're someone who is sitting at your desk all day and it's hard for you to get up and have, a proper lunch, just having wraps that are ready to go or an easy sandwich recipe. And you can always change up the flavors of those as well. So I'm always an advocate of making a new wrap or a new sandwich. I think that's easy.
Easy enough.
Mhm.
So with that, Taylor, we're toward the end of the episode. What we like to ask our guests to, for our listeners, is to provide ways in which folks can learn more about your work and even connect with you after this podcast.
Yeah, so I have an Instagram for Georgetown Nutrition. That's fueling_Georgetown, as well as my own personal Instagram that is a nutrition-based account, and that is my first and last name _RD. So it's Taylor Barros _RD.
Okay, and that's on Instagram. Well,
Yep.
this is really helpful. Taylor, I want to thank you so much for your time with us here today. I think one of my key takeaways has been specifically what you mentioned with the light and the intensity. So what kind of workout are you really doing? A high intensity one or a low one? So I'm going to kind of remember that analogy the next time I go work out. Definitely not doing a triathlon, so I won't be on the high intensity side. But even if I go for a little bit of a run, that's going to be a great way for me to remember how to refuel myself. So really appreciate your time with us today.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me. It was a good session, and hopefully a lot of people will get something out of it.
Absolutely. So find Taylor and Yumlish on all of the social media accounts linked in our podcast show notes. Our Yumlish socials help you learn more about our mission at Yumlish, keep you updated on helpful tips for managing your diabetes, and give you access to exciting opportunities like our upcoming virtual Garden to Table Facebook Live cooking class. With that, if you enjoy the Yumlish podcast and know a healthcare expert working in the nutrition space, reach out to us on Instagram to nominate them. You can send us a DM, tell us who your nominee is, what they do that is so exciting, and that's making a difference in the lives of individuals conquering chronic illness. Until next time. Thank you for listening to the Yumlish podcast with Shireen. If you like our show and want to learn more, you can find information at yumlish.com. You can also leave us a review here. We will see you at the next one. And remember, your health always comes first.